Welcome, everyone, to the 4th Pan-Asian Voter Empowerment Coalition Mayoral Candidate Forum. Before we get started, I'm going to pass it to CAN TV to share some brief opening remarks.
Good evening. I'm Anna Ninoyu, a proud Asian American and the chair of CAN TV's board of directors. CAN TV is thrilled to serve as the official media sponsor of tonight's forum because the issues that are important to the Pan-Asian Voter Empowerment Coalition are the issues that are important to CAN TV and its viewers. We very much look forward to tonight's event, a critical opportunity to hear more about the candidates' positions on important issues impacting Asian Americans in all our communities in Chicago. Let's begin tonight's program right now.
Welcome again. My name is Grace Pai. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mark Anthony Florido. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a board member and core leader with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago.
Mark Anthony and I are thrilled to be your moderators this evening. Thank you to the Chicago History Museum for hosting us, to our Pan-Asian Voter Empowerment Coalition partners for making tonight's forum possible, and to all of you for attending tonight, whether you're joining us here in person or online. Before we dive in, I'd like to cover a couple of important housekeeping items. First, masks are required for the entirety of the forum. Emergency exits are located here to the sides and also to the back of the forum, or of the theater. Food and drink are not allowed inside the theater, so if you need some refreshments, please step outside. If you need any assistance, you can look for a volunteer wearing a gray Asian Americans Advancing Justice t-shirt. I'd like to start tonight's program with a land acknowledgement. We are on the ancestral homelands of the Potawatomi people who cared for the land until forced out by non-native settlers. Today, Chicago is home to the largest urban indigenous population in the Midwest, and they continue to honor this land and its waterways, practice traditions, and celebrate their heritage.
Tonight's forum was made possible by the Pan-Asian Voter Empowerment Coalition, or PAVE, which is made up of 16 Asian American advocacy and direct service organizations from across Chicagoland area. PAVE's mission is to empower our communities through civic engagement and policy change. Tonight, our audience represents our great city from numerous neighborhoods, from Uptown to Chinatown, from Albany Park to West Ridge. We'd like to acknowledge the PAVE organizations here tonight. The Alliance of Filipinos for Immigrant Rights and Empowerment.
Apnagar.
Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago.
Cambodian Association of Illinois.
The Chinese American Service League.
Chinese Mutual Aid Association.
The Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community.
Hamdard Health Center.
The Hana Center.
Muslim Civic Coalition.
Indo-American Center.
Japanese American Citizens League, Chicago.
The Japanese American Service Committee.
Lao American Organization of Elgin.
South Asian American Policy and Research Institute.
And the Vietnamese Association of Illinois.
Let's give a hand for all our PAVE Coalition partners here tonight.
Asian Americans are the fastest growing racial group in Chicago, in Illinois, and in the entire country. Asian Americans make up 7% of Chicago's 2.7 million population. According to the 2017 American Community Survey, 34% of Asian Americans have limited English proficiency. Our communities face difficulties accessing public services, receiving culturally competent health care, finding work, and participating in elections. Tonight, in living out our values for a linguistically just world, we're offering interpretation in 7 Asian languages. Those languages are Hindi and Urdu, Korean, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese, Khmer, and Tagalog. Can we have a hand for all of our interpreters tonight?
We know that there are a lot of offices on your ballot this election cycle. There are currently 9 people running for mayor. Tonight, we are joined by 7 of these candidates. We are so excited to have them directly engage with the Asian American community tonight.
The format of tonight's forum will be as follows. Community members will share testimonies and pose questions to the candidates. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. When your time is up, candidates, a timer will go off to let you know. With that said, let's introduce the candidates. Tonight, we're joined by State Representative Cam Buckner, Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, J. Mal Green, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Alderman Roderick Sawyer, Paul Vallis, and Dr. Willie Wilson. Let's give them a hand for joining us. Alderwoman King had planned to join us tonight, but unfortunately she's feeling under the weather, so she was not able to join us at the last minute. Originally, we also had planned to have all the candidates share an opening statement, but due to a last-minute candidate confirmation, we had to cut opening statements. That said, Mayor Lightfoot was unable to join us tonight, and so she has sent a representative to read a brief statement on her behalf.
Thank you, Grace. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Unfortunately, Mayor Lightfoot could not attend tonight, but she really wanted to be here in support of the AAPI community of Chicago to talk about the issues that matter to us most. Over the last 4 years, Mayor Lightfoot has led Chicago with equity and inclusion at the forefront of all her work. She knows firsthand what it's like to fight for a seat at the table. So she's out there fighting every day so that the city can meet the needs of all of us, no matter who you are or where you live. I'm proud to be on Team Lightfoot because the mayor has been a strong advocate for the AAPI community, and she will continue to prioritize our members and businesses as well as our most important concerns in her second term. But looking back on her first term, there's a lot to be proud of. Mayor Lightfoot established an AAPI Community Engagement Council to advise her administration on policies relevant to the community. Mayor Lightfoot appointed the 11th Ward Alderwoman Nicole Lee, our first Chinese American and first Asian American woman on the City Council. She established a committee to address hate crimes against the AAPI population with the Chicago Commission on Human Relations. Mayor Lightfoot doubled down on Chicago's Welcoming City Ordinance, ending any police collaboration with ICE. The Lightfoot administration committed $100 million in small business grants to support those experiencing loss of revenue due to COVID-19, which helped many of our businesses to keep their doors open. Finally, Mayor Lightfoot and her team have honored Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month and celebrated holidays important to us at City Hall. With all that being said, we made some great progress, but the work simply isn't done yet. Mayor Lightfoot wants to see the job through into a second term, but we can't achieve that without you. Please consider voting for Mayor Lightfoot in a few short weeks. I'm proud to stand with her, especially with all of you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Bart. Now we invite community members to share their questions.
To start us off tonight, I'd like to introduce Radhika Sharma, the Outreach and Training Manager at Apnagar. She has a question about public safety.
Good evening. My name is Radhika Sharma Gordon, and I work at Apnagar, an organization addressing gender-based violence with a particular focus on Asian American and immigrant and refugee populations. In 2020, Asian Americans Advancing Justice Chicago and the Chicago chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations had to develop bystander intervention trainings to address the unprecedented rise in hate incidents directed against Asian Americans. In 2022, hundreds of Asian American and Pacific Islanders living in Chicago requested services and information regarding abuse and domestic violence from Apnagar, Conwin, and Arab American Family Services. Every day, mentors and counselors receive reports of Asian American youth experiencing sexual harassment and bullying while walking down the streets of Chicago or while riding the CTA. Many Asian American and immigrant survivors of violence are afraid to interact with police due to language barriers, immigration status, and cultural norms. Furthermore, policing does not prevent violence from happening in our homes, schools, workplaces, and communities. Our question for you this evening is, what systemic changes will you make to address the root causes of violence to ensure safety in our city? We will start with Representative Buckner.
Good evening, and thank you for that question. We know that we have a public safety issue in this city, and we know that the symptom of that disease, the symptom of the lack of public safety being violent crime that has occurred around Chicago, has really shocked us and hurt us in remarkable ways. Specifically, in the Asian American Pacific Islander community, we have seen an uptick. We have seen the number of anti-Asian hate crimes in Chicago have quadrupled since 2021, quadrupled. So as we talk about what we can do through our police department and also dealing with root causes to make sure that we give the community some semblance of safety and that we make sure that we put the resources in the right place, there are a few things we gotta do. One, I talked a lot about making sure that we redraw police districts to make sure that we are putting proper resources where they can go based on what we have. But there also needs to be some real connectivity between our communities and CPD. When we talk about the district councils that are going to be stood up just in a couple of weeks here, those district councils have to work with a singular voice to say what it is that the people of communities need to say to the Chicago Police Department to work in a way to make themselves safe. We also talk about public safety not being just a CPD issue, public safety being an issue with the Chicago Public Schools, public safety being an issue with our housing, public safety being an issue with the lack of mental health clinics in the city. And so I've talked about bringing all those things to bear so that we can make sure that everyone in every community is safe.
Congressman Garcia.
Thank you for the invitation on the question of addressing the root causes. First of all, we cannot forget that it's decades in the making that has impoverished people and segregated people in Chicago for a long, long time. And it is the inequities that are driving a lot of the violence, and it's the root cause of a lot of the violence that we see playing out today across Chicagoland. In order to address those inequities, as an urban planner from the University of Illinois at Chicago, some of the initiatives that I would undertake in our Garcia administration would be to begin systematically investing in disinvested communities through comprehensive community development to address the housing needs, the healthcare needs, the retail shopping needs, the transportation needs in those disinvested communities, because those are the youth that are driving a lot of the violence that all of us have come to really see and appreciate, because now it is distributed throughout the city of Chicago. Another important investment would be investing in violence prevention programs. Why do I say that? I did that work for 12 years, creating a Little Village Violence Prevention Collaborative that worked with groups across the city of Chicago. Very important. Funding our schools and doing violence prevention is very important. Lastly, I would say is the full implementation of the consent decree to ensure accountability and constitutional and community policing in Chicago. Thank you.
Mr. Green.
All right, everybody. Whoop, whoop. All right. All right, everybody. My name is J. Maul Green. I'm so proud to be here today. And the question is on public safety. And let me just say, you're going to hear a lot from regular politicians about things that they would do that you've heard for many years that have not worked. We have to try new things and then really invest in communities. And that's what our plan does. That's why we move forward an epic public safety plan on our website. It stands for Economic Prosperity, Prevention, Intervention, and CPD Reform. When you talk about economic prosperity, we're talking about investing into neighborhoods, creating new homeowners, creating safe spaces for young people, community centers, and the creation of jobs. We also got to have a better connection to community. So we would invest in a block club infrastructure program for all of the 77 neighborhoods so that people are on the front lines and can have a connection to City Hall. As well as we will put mobile hubs of basically city halls in neighborhoods throughout the city of Chicago so folks can access services better instead of a huge disconnect from downtown. We must also invest in young people so that they are not on the streets. Every young person in the city of Chicago need to be at a job. So we're presenting a plan to fund apprenticeships for young people 13 and up. And that's year round. We also want to open up the schools throughout the day and on weekends so they have massive programming with mentoring organizations to put them on the right path. We're going to invest in people and communities, and that's how we tackle public safety.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, and good evening to everyone. Brandon Johnson, I'm proud to represent the west side of Chicago and the western suburbs as Cook County Commissioner. Look, this is a serious problem. And it's going to require us to take this problem seriously, but we also have to be smart. You know, like I'm raising my family on the west side of Chicago. My wife and I, we've had to cover our children countless times because of the gunshots that have broken out right outside our home. Like we live this every single day. And that's why as Cook County Commissioner, I work to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into violence prevention programs that are on the streets right now. It's why we invested millions of dollars into workforce development to close the gap between education and job opportunities. But here's what we also have to do. I've just released my public safety plan today, where we get at the root causes and we deal with the immediacy of the violence. It's why I'm going to double our youth hiring program. It's going to be year-round. We can hire up to 60,000 young people. There's a direct correlation between youth employment and violence reduction. It's why I'm also supported by the Treatment Not Trauma movement. That's going to provide first responders with mental health training and professionals to deal with ultimately what almost 40% of the 911 calls entail. By having first responders who can handle the trauma that people are exhibiting, it frees up law enforcement to deal with the more violent crimes. Do you all know that over 40% of the violence that happens in the city of Chicago happens in 6% of the neighborhood? As your mayor, we're going to do what safe American cities do. We're going to invest in people. Thank you.
Before you begin, Alderman Sawyer, just a reminder for our candidates, our interpreters are working hard, so if you could just watch your pace so that they have a chance to interpret, that'd be great. But Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you for that. In response to the question, which is trying to eliminate the root causes of violence, I was proud to have sponsored the community commissions that you will be voting on, but the real answer to this is opportunity. We want to make sure that particularly our youth have real opportunity for training, for jobs, and it starts in school. We want to make sure we become focused about making sure that our prime objective is to educate our students in our public schools, not to just warehouse them and keep them there, really provide true education for them. Also, we need to provide opportunities in the forms of training and job placement. We currently have a Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership that is fully in place that will train everyone from 16 to 80. Let's take advantage of these types of programs that we have currently. Going into the future, we want to make sure that everyone has a real opportunity for employment, and I'm talking about career-based employment. These are the ways to stop the root causes of violence. Let's get ahead of it before it becomes violent, before it becomes a thing. Give people more opportunity, more training, more understanding, more engagement, and that will get ahead of people before they consider a life of crime. And also, if they do make that unfortunate choice, we must have a robust law enforcement program to make sure that people understand that if you do something like that, you will suffer consequences. But let's get ahead of them first. Let's catch them before it becomes violent. Let's get them real opportunities to be successful.
Mr. Vallis.
Great. I've laid out a detailed plan on how to address the issue of youth unemployment by creating work-study in all of our schools. Every single agency, every single department, the unions, et cetera, can create paid work study opportunities for young people. In addition, we need a reentry program for returning citizens. That means those individuals returning from incarceration. I spent 1.5 years working with Sally Yates in the Justice Department for just such a program. But let me tell you what we also need. We also need a return to a policing strategy that has beat integrity, that has police officers on every beat, that has police officers walking the CTA platforms and at the CTA stations. So last year, there were 400,000 high-priority 911 calls that did not have a car available. We also need for the police department to be organized so that they're focusing on domestic violence cases. Only 10% of the domestic violence cases are responded to, and there is no follow-up to those cases. And we also have to accept the fact that we have got to build the capacity to protect both witnesses and victims. Right now, someone will make a domestic violence call, and then that'll be it. It'll be a one-off, and no one will ever return to that home to see how that individual is being treated, which means we not only need to have those constant surveillance services, but we need to take these 15,000 vacant residential buildings that are available, and we need to turn them over to community-based organizations so we can provide alternative placement for individuals and families and who have been the victims of domestic violence.
Dr. Wilson?
Thank you. Well, the first thing that I would do, as I always say, taking the handcuffs off the police and put it on the people who's committing the crime. This is personal to me because I lost a son, 20 years old, to violence, and that is tough. There's too many rules on the police officer to keep them from doing their job. I would support the police officer. I wouldn't defund the police. I'll bring back the CAP program, and I'll diversify the police cars so that you approach something like in terms of the Asian community, then we can have not only African American or only white or only Asian, but we'll mix the cars so that they can better communicate with the community in terms of language barrier. So that would help things out a lot better. I would get the FBI involved and work with them to prevent this crime. It's a hate crime. People should be caught and punished for it. That takes and kill someone or rob someone and have the whole community frightened. We would deal with these particular people who commit these crimes, and we would make sure we stop it. You would have my word on it. We will stop it.
Thank you, Radhika, for your testimony. Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Afroz Hafiz, a leader with the Muslim Civic Coalition. He has a question about language access.
Assalamu alaikum. Very good. Good evening, Chicago. My name is Dr. Afroz Hafiz. I'm a healthcare and community leader in the Chicagoland area. I represent the Muslim Civic Coalition. I and others like me see the need every day for better access to health, education, and all services. All immigrants, refugees, and undocumented community members deserve access to public institutions and services. I think we could all agree to that. Unfortunately, the reality is that language barriers and other challenges pose significant hurdles for Asian Americans, African Americans, Latinos, even with my own family. My parents and family, as many immigrants, struggled to navigate systems that we were unfamiliar with as new Americans. Today, I pay it forward to help others. We can build a multilingual society and ensure language access for all when we work together. I promise to do my part as a healthcare professional. Do you? As mayor, what will you do to ensure the members of our communities are not denied access to emergency services or public services due to a language barrier or lack of cultural competencies? We will start with Congressman Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very important question. First of all, I have to tell you, as an English language learner, I truly understand the issue. As an immigrant, I understand the issue. As a matter of fact, it was an instance of a woman going to a local community hospital in 1991, being misdiagnosed because she could not speak English, and there not being a competent interpreter, that this woman died. And it's what provoked me as a state senator to introduce and pass in 1993 the Illinois Language Assistance Act. And there may be some people in the room who helped advocate for passage of that law. It's a law that ensures that people who speak another language, people who are hearing impaired or speech impaired, get culturally competent interpreters, because it means life or death. So I'm very proud of that legislation. And it serves as the bulwark of a policy that I would have as mayor, where emergency services, other public services would be provided through multiple languages with cultural competency. That is very, very important. The other thing that I'm very proud to have done over decades of work is to help elect the first Asian American representatives to the Illinois General Assembly, people like Teresa Ma, to ensure that you instill that you pass the most important legislation. Kevin Olakal most recently, and Nabila Siad as well, to empower the community and advance it.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Green.
This is such an important issue. And one of the things that needs to happen in our administration is we need to establish a commission of folks who make sure that the services are getting to everyone throughout the city of Chicago in all departments. When you look at businesses, I talk to a lot of business owners who have problems because they don't have the translation of applications when it comes to applying to business licenses. Or in our schools with our children, we need to make sure that we have enough folks in our schools to really teach languages. All of our kids throughout the city of Chicago should know multiple languages. We have to really come to a new century here in the modern times and make sure that folks are getting the services that they need, especially being a sanctuary city, as folks are coming to Chicago at an alarming rate. And so we got to be prepared for them. The city of Chicago must make sure that they have folks that can translate. We must have a commission that oversees all departments to make sure that there are interpreters all throughout the city of Chicago to make sure that folks are getting the services that they need. And we must teach our children in our public schools so that we can better acquaint with our AAPI folks, as well as all of the immigrant community.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, this is especially sensitive. I mean, as a black man, I can tell you how language was used to prevent black folks from having access to the ballot, where the struggle just to experience democracy, how white supremacy was used as a tool to keep black educators from becoming teachers. So as a teacher, it's why I worked hard to make sure that we're investing in our bilingual education program. And I've done that as an organizer, making sure that English language learners and those who wish to teach bilingual education, that they have access to curriculum that gives more incentive for teachers to actually have that certification. It's why, as a Cook County Commissioner, we worked to make sure that our translations were speaking to all of the languages that make up the entire county of Cook. Look, I think the bottom line is that, unfortunately, for a very long time in this country, that systems of oppression have used language to prevent immigrants and those seeking refuge here in the city of Chicago access to public accommodations. And under my administration, we're going to expand the Office of New Americans to make sure that the services that are needed for communities that want safety and security here, that you'll have someone within my administration that works tirelessly to make sure that those opportunities are available. For a better, stronger, safer Chicago, you need someone who sees all people of Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you. I had to check right before the forum today to see how our website was doing. And although we do have over 100 languages currently on the site, the concern that I have is expanding that service, particularly in the areas when you really need help. 911 services, emergency services, medical services. Those are the things that where you really need to have vibrant opportunity for translations so that we can make sure that we can understand and assist. So I want to make sure that when we're doing that, that we make sure that we have everything that can be translated in all languages as possible. I know we have over 100 currently on file. I stopped counting after 100, but this is too important for us to miss right now. We have to do something, and as chair of the Human Relations Committee, which is the place where we do these types of things, we want to make sure that that access is provided all across the board, that we can assess and figure out the languages for everyone. I think there are 195 different languages in the world right now. We need to accommodate everyone. As a world-class city, as a sanctuary city, it's our responsibility to keep that going and make sure that we have that available at any given time, particularly during emergency times.
Thank you. Mr. Vallis.
You know, I can't believe we're still debating this issue. There is absolutely no reason why every single department, every single agency, all the access to emergency services should not have any language or cultural barriers. It's a matter of somebody just demanding that it be done. I mean, just imagine all the mandates, the irrelevant mandates, the ineffective mandates that we impose. One would think that in a city as diverse as Chicago, this would, in effect, be a mandate. This is a leadership issue. You know, when I ran the Chicago Public Schools in 1995, we had a great, you had some schools that had 26 different languages. So we had an issue of diversity when it came to teachers. So we created an office of language and diversity that focused exclusively on developing diversity curriculum in all the subject areas. They even had a diversity calendar, but we also recruited teachers with a target toward diversifying our teacher population. And we actually set up a program that we were able to give teachers from other countries 6-year work visas to come in and teach in our schools. So it's simple. Elect somebody who's going to get it done. Another commission, another project, another study group. At the end of the day, mandate it and it will be done. Scrutinize every department's budget and it will get done. It's simply a matter of leadership, and there's been a leadership vacuum on this issue for far too long, and quite frankly, it's embarrassing.
Thank you. Dr. Wilson.
Well, the way I look at it this way here is that we'll visit all 7 communities in Chicago probably about 4 or 5 times in the last few months. And our staff is made up of different nationalities in Chicago. Made up of Latina, Asian American, Muslim American, of all of us. You have to start before you get into the office to understand people. We do an awful lot of business in Asia, China, a lot of business around the world. Our employees is in China, a lot of them as well. And we make sure that they know the language, bring them over, teach them the language, learn it as well as overseas. And so what needs to be done here is that you start up at top and you work your way down. I would promise that the administration would start at top and work its way down and make sure that all the office of the City of Chicago agency will reflect the population of Chicago. That's the way you're really going to get it done. When we was trying to open up to get the poll, they closed down a lot of the poll and interpreted. We fought to open those polls back up, right? We will continue to do so. And as your mayor, coming up as your mayor, we would take that and make sure that we open those polls back up, put people who can interpret it, mix the office, each agency with diverse in Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Buckner.
Language justice is a huge issue in this city, and we've got to do a much better job of making sure we address it. People come to Chicago from all over the world for a better life. and they bring with them their cultures, their traditions, but also their language. And for far too long, they've been left out of the conversation. This is personal to me. My wife and I are raising bilingual children, and as we look at the barriers that exist, we've got to do a much better job. Under a Buckner administration, we will decenter linguistic standards in this city, making sure that everyone from no matter where they're from has an ability to get the emergency services they need, to get the city resources they need, and to be able to be full members of society here in this city. Whether you speak Hindi or Mandarin or Cantonese or Korean or Tagalog, whatever it may be, that we have the ability to give you the space and the resources to get those things done under my administration. What I also will say is that I'm very proud to have co-sponsored the TEACH Act in the Illinois General Assembly in 2021 to help make sure that we brought Asian American history to our schools, but that's not enough. I think we also got to find a way to bring Asian American languages to our young people so they can be a part of the process to learn more, and so we can create some connectivity across the board. Under a Buckner administration, this will be the best language access city in the entire country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hafiz, for your testimony. I'd now like to introduce Manolo Tobias, a community member with the Alliance of Filipinos for Immigrant Rights and Empowerment. He has a question about supporting our older community members.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manolo Tobias. I am from the Philippines. I came to the United States in 2000. I came to the United States in 2003, and I became a United States citizen in 2018. I am a domestic worker, caregiver. During the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown of 2020, older domestic workers like me suffered difficulty in looking for jobs because employers were not open to hiring older workers such as myself. As a senior citizen, I am also more vulnerable to COVID-19. I was deprived of my friends and community in isolation, and I felt sad and worried. I was unable to provide food for my family. A recent survey of Asian American seniors conducted by Chinese American Service League found that seniors are most concerned about living in poverty and isolation as they age. As mayor, what specific policies will you implement to address poverty and isolation among older community members? We'll start with Mr. Green.
All right, this is such an important issue. We've moved forward a plan that actually tackles this. And one of the things that we would do in regards to poverty is that we believe that we have to give folks a foundation. And so we move forward a prosperity push pilot where we would give $1,000 to 10,000 families each year to give them the foundation and help push them out of poverty. And that will be accessible for everyone, no matter the status, no matter the age. And I think that is one of the biggest pieces that we must do. We also must make sure that the Department of Aging has more teeth, right? They have a cubicle in the back of City Hall, probably with 1 or 2 workers. We need a fully funded department where we are actually making sure that we are providing job opportunities and housing access and opportunities for folks to be able to provide for their families. It makes no sense that you should have went through that. It makes no sense in the city of Chicago, a world-class city, that you had to be in a position where you couldn't provide for your family. And the city of Chicago must make it a priority to bring forth the resources. And that's why we will have the push pilot. We'll have housing opportunities. We'll have a Department of Aging of officials that will focus on making sure they're finding job opportunities so that folks can live a prosperous life in this city, no matter who they are, no matter their age, no matter where they come from or their background. And we're going to make sure that happens under Green administration.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, our senior population is, one of the more vulnerable populations in the city. My father, who is a hero of mine, he turned 80 years old today. He's a very tough man, but he's on fixed income. And so that's why I am supportive, and the movement behind my candidacy is supportive of bringing Chicago home. That's going to push for a real estate transfer tax so that we can actually generate the revenue to create more housing and affordable housing opportunities for those who are unhoused or those who are housing insecure. As Cook County Commissioner, I've built 2 senior affordable housing units in my first term. We've also broke ground on 1. And so as Cook County Commissioner, I also passed the Save Our Seniors resolution that brought more safety and protection for the most vulnerable and our seniors. And now we have far stricter regulations at the state level to protect those who provide supporting work for our elderly, and then those, of course, who are in our senior population. The final thing is this: we have to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to ensure that the investments that we make speak directly to families who are experiencing those levels of vulnerability. And under a better, stronger, safer Chicago, my agenda and my budget plan speaks directly to that. Thank you.
Alderman Sawyer.
Thank you. This is a very serious concern, especially as I'm approaching, I'll be 60 in a couple of months, so I really get it now, more than I ever have before. And but what we have to really start doing is looking at a couple of things. One, things that are already in place. We have older persons that are in homes, and their taxes are going up, but sometimes they're preventable. So we have to make sure, one, we take advantage of the things that are in place right now. We have senior exemptions, we have senior freezes, we have long-term exemptions. Make sure that our seniors are taking advantage of everything that's offered to them right now. I also support, and I think a lot of my colleagues here on the dais as well, a fully functioning Department of Aging. We want to make sure that we have a one-stop shop where people can come and get resources and information as it relates to older persons. Now, one of the things that concerns me even more so than the poverty aspect is the loneliness, is the isolation. We have to do more with intergenerational activities, making sure that older persons could be the mentors or be a part of groups with another generation of people. This is something that's so important right now. Socialization, when you're old and you're by yourself, you're an older person by yourself, that just triggers all sorts of negative things that occur. We have to continue to make sure that we're working together, that we can work, again, with the Department of Aging, work with our partners, working with other community groups and schools that offer something for our more senior members to give advice and wisdom that we most certainly need in this time in Chicago.
Thank you. Mr. Vallis?
I think we all agree that we need a Department of Aging. After all, getting rid of the Department of the Environment, closing the mental health centers, closing down literally the Department of Aging were 3 of the dumber decisions that have been made the last 10 years. You need a Department of Aging that's going to be the catalyst for change. Secondly, we need a strategy to protect our seniors. Our seniors are most vulnerable. The AARP did a survey that said half the people 50 years and older would like to move out of the city, but they can't because of their income limitations. And the number one reason is they feel unsafe. So that means safety on the CTA. That means providing seniors with the ability to go shopping, to pick up their medicine and things like that. We have to do senior visitation, senior outreach. It's absolutely critical, and it has to be driven by the Department of Aging. The third thing that we've got to do is we've got to remove the obstacles to hiring seniors. Let's face it. I'm a senior. I'm running for mayor. Okay, I removed, hopefully, thank God there's no obstacles for me. In fact, Jamal said that if he becomes mayor, I'm going to be part of his Hire the Senior program. But the fourth thing we need to do is we need to make sure that's, and you too, and I don't know about Willie, though, but the fourth thing we need to do is we need to keep seniors in their homes and not drive them out of their homes. We need to, as Rod said, we need to make sure that seniors can access all those tax exemptions and tax breaks without having to go back every single year, and they need to be able to do it from home. And we need to end foreclosures for seniors and families, and we need to cap individual property taxes because seniors in communities undergoing significant gentrification are literally driven into homelessness.
Thank you. Dr. Wilson?
Well, I think you have to look at my record. When COVID-19 hit, we're giving away over 60 million face masks, which equate to about $100 million. 25% of that went to senior. We went in senior houses, throughout the state, around the United States, when senior citizens didn't have face masks. We went also to California, from Chicago to New York, and gave them away personally myself. We pay senior citizen water bill. We pay their taxes. We pay for their phone bills. So we constantly do this. Every 3 months, we go to senior citizen home and spend $300,000 on senior. I had a mother that before she passed away, she was struggling, and we still help seniors today, and we will continue to do so. But we will make it better once we become mayor. We'll continue with the work that we're doing already now, but we can do more doing that.
Thank you. Representative Buckner?
Let's make no mistake about it. Our senior population is truly the soul and the conscience of this city. I truly believe that the way we should judge a municipal government is by the way they treat the youngest and the oldest among them. And so I think Chicago has truly missed the mark. I got the opportunity just last week to spend some time with my grandmother on her 95th birthday. And these conversations that I have with her and many of my constituents really paint the picture that we've got to do more. I had the privilege of being the chief sponsor of the Illinois Aging Equity Act in the Illinois General Assembly. The work that we have done in that space and will continue to do to make sure that seniors can age in place, that we can have multi-generational housing, that we can provide access and resources to our aging population is extremely important to me. I agree with my colleagues that we have to reconstitute the Department of Aging and to put the resources into the department so it can be fully functioning and do what it's supposed to do. We have to make sure that we are providing financial assistance with utility bills, housing. We need to do more about alternative dwelling units so that our elderly folks can have more places affordably to live within this city. We got to make sure that we have legal aid and health services and all of the things that people need to have a substantial quality of life so they can age in place and continue to be the beacon for us in this city.
Thank you. Congressman Garcia?
Thank you. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Manolo Tobias for being an outstanding citizen. It has been proven that people that naturalize are more active than either native-born citizens because they truly care and appreciate the citizenship process. Having said that, for seniors, so that they're not living in poverty and isolation, first, we have to make sure that we do everything possible to enable them to stay in their homes. It is good for them. It extends their lives. It helps keep them healthier. It is a benefit for wellness. Two, I want to commend Representative Buckner for being the champion on the aging equity bill in Springfield. It's critical. The Aging Equity Bill also says that we need to ensure that there is good nutrition for seniors, so the Meals on Wheels program would be guaranteed and work with community organizations to make sure that everyone is getting it. Also, we need to provide property tax relief for seniors that are being pressured in areas that are gentrifying. I introduced such a proposal today. You can read about it in the Sun-Times to try to provide that type of property tax relief. And of course, it's very important that there be adequate levels of home care workers to care for seniors in their homes, to make sure that they're kept clean, that they're provided meals, that they live in dignity, and that they don't live in isolation. A few of the things that would be guaranteed in a Garcia administration, working with the General Assembly and, of course, the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Manolo, for your testimony. Unfortunately, Alderman Sawyer has to leave early to make it to another commitment, so thank you, Alderman, for joining us. I wanted to also make another quick. Oh no. I wanted to also remind the candidates to please speak slowly so that our interpreters can keep up with you. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Lily Lay, a community organizer with the Vietnamese Association of Illinois. She has a question about affordable housing.
Good evening. My name is Lily. I'm a community organizer with the Vietnamese Association of Illinois. From anti-Asian and anti-Black violence, worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic, our community members have experienced numerous challenges. In the past couple of years, I've seen how community has come together to distribute clothes, foods, and supplies to their neighbors and help each other meet basic needs. Still, one challenge that community members find difficult to overcome is securing affordable, well-maintained housing, especially unhoused folks, people who are not citizens, and low-income immigrant seniors with low English proficiency. Safe and affordable housing is a human right. Except in Chicago, affordable housing is extremely difficult and time-consuming to obtain. Many immigrant seniors live on a fixed income and feel isolated due to language barriers and lack of family in Chicago. Their isolation worsens when they struggle to apply for and find affordable housing. Many seniors and unhoused folks have told me that they have been on the Chicago Housing Authority wait list for over a year. Another community member shared that many people have been forced to share tiny rooms that are only meant for one person because they cannot find their own room. Further, rent in Chicago has skyrocketed without any safeguards for renters. Throughout the pandemic, Chicago failed to preserve affordable housing safeguards for community members, such as a moratorium on evictions and requirements that landlords give more notice before raising the rent. I have a two-part question. First, do you support rent control, which would require repealing state law? And second, what specific policies do you support to increase affordable housing? We'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your work as an organizer. Yes, I do. And secondly, as I indicated earlier, bringing Chicago home, this ordinance is something that we have to pass within the first 100 days of my administration. The fact that we have 665,623 people are unhoused. Many of them are doubled up. Many of those individuals who are unhoused are students, young people. I've seen it in the classroom where students and children are unhoused or they're hungry and they're coming into our school buildings every single day. And so making sure that we have a budget plan, which I've released one, no one else in this race has, where we speak directly to eliminating the deficit that has mired down our economy while raising revenue to make the critical investments that's going to help those who are unhoused, and we do that without raising property taxes. We need to create a pathway through revenue sources, which I've proposed for not just more affordable housing units, but workforce development to put housing back on the stock by actually developing those students, young people in schools to help repair those homes. And then we have to have a pathway to home ownership. My wife and I were making $80,000 combined, and we needed 2 government assistance programs for down payment to purchase our first home. I'm gonna do that as your mayor. We're gonna make sure that we're creating more affordable housing, and finally, not just a pathway to home ownership, but public housing. That is what this city has to build, and we're gonna do that under a Johnson administration.
Thank you. Mr. Vallis, and candidates, you can remain seated because you're actually getting projected on, so
sorry about
you're
that.
good.
Okay.
But Mr. Vallis.
All right. First of all, I support property tax caps, period. What's driving rents up and what's driving people out of their homes are rising property taxes in gentrifying areas across the city. And I also support a moratorium on foreclosures. People should never be driven out of their homes because they can't afford to pay their property taxes. You can always work out some sort of a payment plan that is tied to their income. I also support expanding the pool of affordable housing. And you do that by removing the obstacles to building affordable housing, by tapping into that $1 billion in TIF diversions, and you using that money to build affordable housing, and by removing obstacles to converting unimproved space to garden units. There's over 100,000 rental properties that could add another 100,000 garden units if you simply removed and incentivized them. And those garden units are always mostly first floor units, and they're very accessible. And I support seizing these 15,000 residential facilities that are empty and turning them over to community-based organizations so that they can provide affordable housing for individuals who are victims of domestic violence, returning citizens, or for that matter, new citizens coming in need of housing. And finally, it's time to get control over the CHA. It's time to bring the CHA under the housing department because the CHA has thousands of units that are sitting there unoccupied. So the CHA is an affordable housing institution with access to tremendous amounts of resources, and it sits there virtually ignored, operating as a citadel out there and doing an extraordinarily inefficient job. If you do these things in combination, I believe you'll begin to really address the affordable housing issue.
Dr. Wilson?
Your first question was, do you support rent control? I think the market has got to flush itself out. I do not support rent control. There's a lot of people who own apartment buildings, homes, and things of that nature. They have to make a living also. They got bank notes and things like that they have to pay for. I do, however, support affordable houses, and how you get there, you have to make sure that some of these vacant building, we can build houses on those particular places there. I think that when you come down to doing that, you're taking a risk. You got to lower real estate taxes, find other ways of making sure that people can stay in their particular homes. But to put a cap on the rent, so many people own property that's already behind. Let the market flush itself out, and then turn around again, as I say, build affordable houses. Economic empowerment, take some of these buildings, put construction work in that, put the people who's homeless in those particular lot and houses. That's a better way I see the way it go.
Thank you. Representative Buckner?
So I want to repeat what was said at the beginning of the question. Housing is a human right, and we have to believe in that in a real way if we're going to move this city along properly when it comes to making sure that we have affordable housing. Listen, I believe that we have to find a way to stabilize rents. I also believe that we got to find a way to stabilize property taxes, tying our property taxes to inflation based on the National Consumer Price Index, which puts us in comparison to places like Manhattan, which are extremely difficult to live in from a financial standpoint. It puts our people in a very disadvantageous position, and so we have to be able to address that. Listen, I too support the Bring Chicago Home initiative. But it's not enough just to support that. We got to be very specific with people about what we're going to do with the dollars that come from that. And so I've put forth a plan that will put about $20 million of that money into single-family rehabs in currently distressed neighborhoods. We also got to put about $20 million into new affordable housing in multifamily housing units. We need to put $10 million into the Trouble Building Initiative, so we are building some of those homes. We have to have between $10 and $20 million in new permanent supportive housing for people who are dealing with housing insecurity in this city. And we also have to refund the New Homes for Chicago program, where we can put alternative dwelling units on city land. The city can build these to make sure that we can be the most affordable housing-friendly city in America.
Thank you. Mr. Green?
Yeah. I mean, this is a huge issue. When you look at the history of Chicago in regards to housing, it is unacceptable how the last few administrations have handled this issue. One of the things that we would do is we want to make sure that we got an economic engine so that we would create a public bank in the city of Chicago. If we have a public bank in the city of Chicago, we can invest and build public housing. We can invest into home ownership where folks who wouldn't usually get a loan from a bank can come to our bank. We can invest in small businesses, and all of the profit that comes back from that bank goes right back to city services. It just makes the most sense. We need a public bank in the city of Chicago. We also have to have incentives to build affordable housing. All of the single-floor commercial buildings, grocery stores, box stores, we need to incentivize them to build affordable housing on top. and we have to loosen the single-family ordinance so that we can make more units, and they can convert them and build units on top and at the bottom to create guard units. We also need a redevelopment authority so that we can take all of the vacant properties that the city has and dispose of those properties in record time so we have mass development. And we got to tackle property taxes. We will put forth a city loyalty tax credit. If you are in your home more than 3 years, we give you 2% off your taxes all the way up to 20 years. So if you're in your house 20 years, you'll get 40% off of your taxes because we care about you being a homeowner in the city of Chicago. And all of those folks at risk of losing their homes, we'll give no interest loans to those folks as well.
Well, thank you, Lily, for sharing your story and for the work that you do. Unfortunately, as you can see, Congressman Garcia needed to head out to catch a flight, so let's thank the Congressman for participating tonight. I'd now like to introduce Melody Kim, the Outreach Coordinator at the HANA Center. She has a question about immigrant services.
Hello, my name is Melody Kim, and as he introduced, I'm an outreach coordinator with HANA Center. When migrant families and asylum seekers from the southern border were bused here in Chicago, I was also stationed at a hotel with my team, along with other community-based organizations. We got to welcome them into our city and provide critical services such as securing housing, receiving financial assistance, and accessing medical and legal services. When I got to hear their personal stories and build relationships with each family, I couldn't help but really want to do my best in providing services to them as they were fleeing from extreme poverty, systemic violence, and just trying to provide a better future for their own children, just like my parents did. But we fear that once the funding is gone, that we'll be unable to continue supporting our migrant community members. As Chicago is a sanctuary and welcoming city, we believe that all Chicagoans, regardless of their country of origin and immigration status, deserve to be supported. So my question is, how will you ensure that Chicago lives up to its title of being a welcoming city and supports immigrant communities in finding permanent housing, securing jobs, and accessing public services? We'll start with Mr. Valles.
Oh, sit down, right? Yeah, great. Sorry about that. Look, quite simply, under my administration, Chicago will be a welcoming city. And that's as simple as directing all the departments and all the agencies and all the entities that provide services simply not to discriminate. Simply not to say, well, who's an immigrant and who is not an immigrant. It's simple as that. I mean, we can talk about creating commissions and organizational structures, but it all begins and ends on the leadership that is being provided when you set that as a priority. You know, I had the privilege of working with Gary Chico and a very diversified board, Dr. Tariq Butt, at the Chicago Public Schools, and we were a welcoming school district. We didn't check people's status. If they needed education, we provided it. If they needed housing, we connected with it. If they needed immigrant to upgrade their status, we worked with immigration and naturalization. We just did it. We just made it happen. We didn't segregate or we didn't discriminate. It simply was part of our DNA, and that's what it needs. And it will be part of my DNA and part of Chicago's DNA when I become mayor. But what we also have to do, too, is we have to recognize that we've got to make sure that when we're a welcoming city, we're a welcoming city everywhere. I mean, one of the biggest issues for not only immigrants, but also returning citizens, those returning from incarceration, is something as simple as the absence of housing. We got the CHA, which is sitting on the sidelines, which has thousands and thousands of units available, and why aren't they being made available? Or for that matter, the 15,000 vacant residential facilities that are unoccupied.
Thank you, Mr. Valles. Thank you. Dr. Wilson.
And that is a question that you asked there. I believe that we must welcome all people who are citizens of the United States and Chicago. We do have laws that we must follow. I go to China, I can't get to China unless I got visa and check things out. But we have to set up a system that when someone has to come here, that we're able to take care of not only them, but taking care of the people who's here as well. And there's a lot of immigrants in the United States that still needs help. But there's also people who's here in Chicago that still needs help. I'm a supporter of human being, period. But we got to make sure that once you come, we have to be prepared to do so. We also must be prepared that people that are here, it can be taken care of in the right way. It's not being anything trying to say we don't like immigrant. I'm just saying the point blank is that we must make sure that the people who's already here, immigrant, the people who's already live here, making sure they're taken care of, then they can be prepared to help other people that comes in that can get through the process of the laws of this country.
Thank you. Representative Buckner.
So this is another issue that's extremely important and personal to me. My wife, Bernadette, is a first-generation American, born to Cuban and Ecuadorian parents who came here searching for a better life. She's here. It's also her birthday today. She's probably gonna get mad that I told y'all that. Happy birthday. But listen, her and I have spent some time over the last couple of weeks volunteering her as a translator for Venezuelan asylum seekers who have come here to this city. And listen, we understand that we cannot just be a welcoming city in theory. We have to be a welcoming city in practice. We have to do the things that, one, make people want to come here, and two, when they get here, we've got to do the things that make them be a part of our larger society in this city. That means providing a situation where immigration status is kept confidential during any city services. That means making sure that public benefits are available to immigrants. Things like immunizations, public school education, breakfast and lunch programs for our young people who are in CPS. It means that providing S-chip for children under 19 who need healthcare, emergency healthcare services, prenatal services for people who are pregnant, and working with the state of Illinois to make sure that we can get licenses and IDs for people no matter what their immigration status is. This is how we move forward as a true welcoming city and doing the work to make Chicago the most welcoming city in the country.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Yeah, no, I want to echo the sentiments of my colleague here. You know, we are a welcoming city. Harold Washington was the mayor, the first mayor in the country to declare a city a sanctuary city. And he is the last great mayor that we've had. And I just want to put that on the record. And we're going to stay that way. We got to make sure that we have resources in place. And that's one of the biggest things is that we got to get our fiscal house in order. And our fiscal house in order means that we got to be prepared. And the mayor must be prepared when she is trying to play political games with Republican governors. This is what's happening is political grandstanding. And our fiscal house need to be in order so we're prepared to be able to welcome all those who come to the city of Chicago. You know, it's also important that we do invest in the folks in Chicago. But let me tell you, we can do both. We have a $28 billion enterprise. It is no reason why we shouldn't be a welcoming city. We should be prepared with every resource in regards to housing, in regards to schooling, in regards to every department in the city should be able to welcome folks to the city of Chicago. This is a human issue. This is a human issue. And we are going to make sure that we address it as such. No human should be without clean air, clean water. No human should be without a proper education. No human should be without housing, all of the opportunities that they need. And that's why we will stay a welcoming city in the city of Chicago.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, it is actually quite sick that you have governors around the state that are using human beings as a political football. It's unconscionable. You know, as I think about what makes Chicago an amazing place, I think about the support that I have from Delia Ramirez, whose mother sought safety and security here in Chicago. And Delia Ramirez was born at the Cook County Hospital, the same Cook County Hospital that provided me services because I grew up with asthma. It's possible if we actually have a plan. And as your next mayor, someone who's been a public school teacher, I know how to put together a lesson plan. And the way we have seen communities pitted against one another, that changes under my administration. No one loses at the expense of someone else winning. But it really requires us to have a full vision, access to health care, making sure that our schools provide full wraparound services as a welcoming space, while also making sure we're investing in the families who've been here. We can do both. I've managed multi-billion-dollar budgets, made critical investments into lives across Cook County, and we did it without raising property taxes. If you want a better, stronger, safer Chicago, Brandon is better. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Melody, for your testimony. I'd now like to introduce Wanya Zahid, a youth leader at the Indo-American Center. She has a question about Chicago Public Schools.
Hi, my name is Wanya Zahid, and I'm a junior at Mather High School in Westridge. My school is one of the most diverse high schools in Chicago. 78% of Mather is low income, 22% is Asian, and 28% are English language learners. Despite our diverse needs, we don't have enough resources. For example, last week my teacher was yelled at for using more paper than their 500 sheet limit when they're teaching multiple classes of 20 to 30 students per day, and we go to school for 176 days. My dream is to pursue a career in cybersecurity. A few months ago, I asked my counselor if I could sign up for the IT class. She said, "I'm sorry, there's not enough space." For a second there, I felt like my dream has ended before even starting. My brother Blal is in 6th grade at Clint Elementary, who's also interested in technology. But his school doesn't have a computer class, while my cousin's school in Skokie has an entire computer lab at their school. After doing my own research, I was able to find free classes about cybersecurity online. Sadly, we can't always rely on our schools, and there are thousands of students like me affected by the lack of resources who have to open doors for ourselves. Even though there's things I want to change about it, I'm proud to be a junior at Mather High School, and I want future generations, including my brother, to have better opportunities. Starting in 2025, Chicago Public Schools will be governed by an elected school board instead of one appointed by the mayor's office. CPS is also expected to face a deficit of $600 million. How will you address this anticipated deficit, and what is your long-term vision for how our public schools are funded? We'll start with Dr. Wilson.
Okay, look, the Chicago Public School must be fully funded, that school teachers and principals don't have to go on strike every year to trying to work in the school system. The Chicago Public School right now have people graduating from it for years. Kids are finishing school, but yet still don't know how to read or write. Crime is high. You know, my kid is grown, but if they wasn't grown and going to Chicago Public School, I would put them into a private school because of crime, and you don't know whether they're gonna come home or not. You know, but we would find ways of doing it. In order to do things, you must lower taxes to attract new businesses here. You must lower taxes in order that people can feel comfortable with coming to Chicago and shopping versus staying in the suburban, and the people that is present here as well can shop in Chicago. So lowering taxes bring revenues up, and you got revenue to pay for our bills and things of that nature. But it should be fully funded, because you can find the money for everything else, but you can't seem to find the money for our school teachers and things of that nature.
Thank you. Representative Buckner?
First off, thank you for sharing your story. And we owe you and your siblings and your classmates a whole lot more. So hopefully what you get from this is not just answers, but some real commitments from all of us that no matter where we are, we'll do the work to make sure that you have the educational experience that you deserve, first off. Secondly, I'll say, listen, we are about $432 million a year short of what we're supposed to be providing our young people. But it's not just a resource conversation. It has to be both resources and leadership. I help lead the fight in Springfield to make sure that we are putting money in our schools based on what their needs are, not based on who's actually, on what the attendance is for our schools. We still got more work to do. I'm happy to have worked with advocates to help push for the elected school board so there can be some real accountability in the CPS system. But once again, enough has not been done. Under a Buckner administration, we will turn the tide, not to make sure that we're just given the resources and we have the leadership, but we have to be honest about the fact that we're spending $30,000 a year per pupil in CPS, but we're spending $60,000 a year if they end up in the Illinois Department of Corrections. That is a problem with our priorities. Lastly, we have to fix our weird addiction to the property tax system when it comes to funding our schools. It's about a 61% funding ratio right now based on property taxes, and it's racist, it's classist, and it puts young people in communities who can least afford it in the worst position. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Well, let me just say thank you so much for telling your story. I love our young people because we don't give them enough credit. Our young people understand what's going on, and they need to determine their future. Can we clap it up for her again? It's time for young people to lead. And we maybe hire some of our seniors here at the table. This is time for us, it's time for us to have some real change. And they have a vision. A lot of folks have memories. They have vision. We have to really start to make sure that we're investing in our young people. Our young people are smarter than Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But we're not investing in those young people. Every school in the city of Chicago should have trade programs, tech hubs all across the city. Our young people should have a pipeline to the middle class jobs. Our young people should be building cars and building massive companies. But our public school system is underfunded and is not giving them the resources that they need. We got kids who don't get the wraparound services for mental health. Our schools should be open with massive mentoring organizations and after-school programs so that they can really start to get the skills that they need. We got to partner them with different jobs. There are manufacturing jobs and trade jobs that are empty right now. We need to be preparing them for the future. We have to invest in our young people. If we don't, then we're not going to have a better future, and that's what we're going to do under a Green administration.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, thank you for your question, and I would hope that you would consider going into teaching one day. I've served as a public school teacher here in Chicago, so I know the type of economic despair that you describe. And this is why I led the frontline effort to create an elected representative school board. And bringing democracy to the city of Chicago was critically important. But it's also necessary that we actually promote policy that sets up our schools to be stronger. And that's why I'm a proponent of sustainable community schools. We have 20 of them. We can expand those sustainable community schools because it gives local control to the local school communities to determine the needs of that community. It's why the stratified school district that we have has been created under this selective enrollment model. The fact that people in the city of Chicago have to apply for something that's free, that's a real jacked up system. Quite frankly, it's racist. My children do not attend the neighborhood schools because they play the violin, the cello, and the viola, because there aren't school programs on the west side of Chicago that offer orchestra. And that's why we're not just going to make sure that our TIF dollars are going into parks and schools. I have a budget plan that eliminates the debt while making critical investments by making the ultra-rich pay their fair share in taxes. That is our vision for sustainable community schools, to make sure that our schools are fully funded. Thank you.
Mr. Vallis.
Look, first of all, the state has to fully fund the formula and provide pension equity. That's has to be done. But let's keep in mind that we're spending $30,000 a child in Chicago public schools, and only about 60% of that money finds its way into the classrooms. So this is what you need to do. You need to revise how schools are funded, and you need to push the money down to the local school level. You need to open these campuses. Every school can be a sustainable community school, just not 20. If you open the campuses and you invite community-based organizations and park district programs, that some of them are just breaking down the doors to get access to those massive campuses. Third, you've got to provide universal work study in all of our schools so our kids can work study electives. Fourth, you can take advantage of the alternative schools funding at the state level, and you could take those empty campuses and open them as alternative schools for the students that have been lost, and they will be funded through the formula. Gary Chico and I and our board did similar programs in 1995 to 2001. You know what happened? Our enrollment grew by 40,000. We had 125,000 more kids than we had today. And we had so much overcrowding that we had to build 30 school campuses, Google it, 30 new schools and 48 additions. And we left the schools with almost $1 billion in cash balances. And we raised teacher salaries 22%, and I never had to close a single school. You know how that happened? We grew. You want to work our way out of the funding problems? Have programs that will grow the schools, period.
Thank you, Wanya, for sharing your story with us tonight. For our final question this evening, we have a quick lightning round question. So candidates, please answer with a simple yes or no. So candidates, tonight you've heard stories from our community members about the issues that are affecting Asian Americans across Chicago. Your question is, with a simple yes or no, if elected mayor of Chicago, do you commit to continue to meet with the PAVE Coalition to discuss how we will work on these issues together? We'll start with Representative Buckner.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Do we get 30 seconds? Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Vallis. Mr. Wilson.
Well, give me your question again.
If elected mayor of Chicago, do you commit to meeting with the PAVE Coalition to discuss the issues that you've, to continue to work on the issues that you've heard about tonight?
You say a PAVE coalition.
The PAVE Coalition, the people that brought this together.
Yeah, this coalition.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to all the candidates for joining with us tonight and sharing your visions with Chicago with us. We look forward to working together to make the city of Chicago more equitable.
So I hope you all learned something tonight about the Asian American community, our city, and the candidates running for mayor. We have a couple more things to share with you, very important information on voting, so please stay with us.
Now is the time to make your plan to vote. Early voting has already begun. There are 2 sites that are open downtown that you can vote at right now. Early voting locations will open in all 50 wards starting next Monday, February 13th. Election Day is in about 3 weeks on Tuesday, February 28th. On Election Day, you can vote at any of the early voting sites or your assigned precinct. You can register to vote or update your voting address at any early voting location. So if you're new to Chicago or if you recently moved, just make sure to bring 2 forms of ID with you. You can also vote by mail. You can request a translated ballot in Hindi, Korean, Chinese, or Tagalog by scanning the QR codes on the screen or on the back of your program. As a reminder, the Chicago Board of Elections is available just outside the theater to answer questions you may have about voting.
Thank you to everyone here in person and online for joining us tonight and supporting the Asian American community in Chicago. And thank you to the amazing community members who came up here and shared their stories and asked important questions to the candidates. I'll now pass it to CAN TV to offer some brief closing remarks.
Wow, what an evening. That concludes tonight's program. A sincere thanks to all tonight's participating candidates, our moderators, our audience members here, and each of you watching from home. And if I can just speak personally for one moment, I have to say it's such an honor to lead this great organization, one of the few places where you can still tune in for unfiltered coverage of our local elections. Be sure to continue watching CAN TV on cable or stream us live and on demand at cantv.org to learn more about the candidates and where they stand on issues that matter to you. Hyperlocal coverage you can count on through February 28th and beyond. Thank you again, and have a good evening.